From AM 1680, this is Business Leaders with Lance Cardoza, the behind-the-scenes story of the business shakers and movers in the Valley and beyond. And now, here's your host, Lance Cardoza.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Big Talk Radio 1680 KGED in studio here with Business Leaders Live. I bring it to you every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. And on the phone this week, I love the diversity of my business leaders, and became a friend of this gentleman. He came down and helped us out at the Fresno Grizzlies and was one of our color analysts for the television broadcast on KAIL when the Grizzlies broadcast about 20-some games over these past couple years. Former Major League Baseball pitcher, race car driver, car enthusiast, and also has a car dealership right here in Fresno and other cities across the country. On the show, CJ Wilson. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Lance.
Hey, and I didn't add to a devoted husband and a great father to two little ones. And you guys have planted your roots right here in Fresno, and you have a great dealership with the BMW, Porsche, and I'm sure I'm missing a lot more. Audi.
Just Audi.
Audi.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go, an Audi. And talk to me about that. You have a love for cars. Major League Baseball player, a pitcher, but you have that love for cars. We'll talk more about that, but where did that all start?
Well, I really fell in love with cars when I was a kid. I was probably, 2 or 3 years old, and really started reading Road and Track magazine and stuff like that because I thought the pictures were cool. And then from there, it kind of took off, and as a kid in that era in the 80s when the Ferrari Testarossa was coming out and all that stuff, it was an easy time to fall in love with cars that were on the side of billboards and in cool movies and TV shows like Magnum PI and all that stuff. So I think that was my big influence.
And it was branded in your mind and you were going to be in that business. So you have a CJ Wilson racing team. I don't know if CJ Wilson Racing is the company. Mm-hmm. And you've raced the IMSA Michelin Pilot
IMSA.
Challenge?
It's called IMSA, yeah. IMSA is the International Motorsports Association. So IMSA is like the governing body that does the 24 Hours of Daytona and Le Mans and all that type of stuff. So that's the goal for me, is to get to the point where I can be a 2 or 3 sport athlete and finish up as a professional race car driver. Awesome.
So your career, you started off first going to school at Fountain Valley High School. And how did that was in and then you went to Santa Ana. You played at Santa Ana College. How did that all start for you? Was it something as a young guy when you first were looking at race cars and cars? Was baseball a big part of your life growing up?
Yeah, I started playing baseball when I was about 9. I have a younger brother, and my dad didn't really want to get us involved too hard in the baseball scene until we were both able to go together, until we were at that age that both of us were there. And, I liked baseball. I liked basketball a lot. I grew up in Southern California, so I was a big Lakers fan. I mean, you got to remember this is like 1980. I was born in 1980, so 1987, Lakers won the title. 1988, 1989, they three-peat. So that was kind of like, that was the big story in sports at the time. The Dodgers had won the World Series. The Lakers had, won a couple championships. LA was kind of the center of the sports universe, and that was the big focus. But I really started to fall in love with baseball once I started collecting baseball cards and memorizing the statistics, seeing the players, seeing the improvement. Some guys would win an MVP award one year and then kind of fall off the next year. I was fascinated by all that stuff. That was really from the analytical side. Then I started reading books about baseball, and that's actually when I started getting better, because I would realize that these all-star players like Nolan Ryan or Wade Boggs or Tony Gwynn, they would publish their thoughts and why they were good. They would write articles or they'd write books, and then I would read those books, and then I would try to incorporate that approach into my Little League games, and it turned out to be pretty successful kind of synthesis, I guess.
It worked out for you in a big way. You played for the Texas Rangers. You also played for the Angels, and most of the people remember you from the Angels. But one of the things I always remembered, I thought was very unique about the pitcher, CJ Wilson, is that you had a color coordination So when you were with the Rangers, you had a glove that was blue. And I'm sure there was something to that made you make those decisions, and it matched the jersey and the uniform. And then when you went over the Angels, you had a red glove. Tell me a little bit about how that started.
Gloves are like the expression of the player, right? So it's just like shoes for a basketball player. And it's not really like some, cause or anything like that. It's just that I wanted to have a cooler looking glove than everybody else. And so I went to Japan one year, on vacation, and actually designed a glove in Japan they have this store, and it's, the way a Dick's Sporting Goods or a Sports Authority or whatever would be over here. But they had another level where you could actually customize some of your stuff. And so I ordered a Mizuno glove over there, and I was a Wilson guy. I used Wilson gloves, not because I'm related to this. I guess maybe tertiarily related, but not directly, not financially related. And I designed this blue glove and had cool stitching done on it and all that stuff, and I brought it back to spring training the next year. And then Wilson, was like, hey, you use a Wilson, like, don't use this Japanese glove, especially because it's a Mizuno. I said, cool, make me this glove, and then I'll use this. But I want it this color, I want all that stuff. So I was one of the first guys to start customizing gloves, I guess, on that level.
You got them started and doing it that.
I guess the achievement list, if you're a baseball player, is having your own cleats and having your own gloves, like your own model, where people can buy it in a retail store. So for a couple of years, Wilson made a A2K CJW, which was my specific configuration. So that was kind of neat. But yeah, Texas used blue gloves, or we used blue jerseys, blue hats, red hats, whatever. So I would just alternate between, the two. I didn't have like a lucky one or anything like that. I just thought it was pretty cool. And most of the time, most of the guys were using a black glove or a brown glove, and they didn't really have any flair. And then once I started doing that I guess it was 2006, that's when I think the pitchers especially, started using cool gloves again.
And I think it also,
kind of a trendsetter.
Your sports writers wrote about it. You had fans talked about it. They loved it, and it was one of the things that, even with me, it caught my attention on television when you were pitching. That I think,
it looks cooler, man. I had like a royal blue glove, and I still have a bunch of my gloves like stacked away. I've even got some of the gloves from like the retail store, because I went out and bought a couple just because I could say to my kids one time, like, hey, Dad was pretty cool. He had his own cleats. They made him his own custom cleats. New Balance made me my own custom cleats. Every year I had 2 or 3 different models, and then, glove-wise, I had 2 or 3 different gloves. So it was pretty cool. It was a kind of a Wheaties box thing for equivalent as a baseball player.
And you got some little ones too, as your kids. As they get older, it's harder and harder, CJ, to be cool to your kids. you get less sure. Cool through the years. So yes, you use those relics and bring them out.
Yeah, that's my plan. One day.
Yeah. So when I thought it was very interesting that you said at Little League, you were reading the Wade Boggs, you were reading Nolan Ryan, you were reading some of these pitchers that you idolized as a young age. Just like if a doctor was going to school and reading papers about the best medical institutions out there and doctors. And so it was very interesting that at a young mind, you were already programming yourself how to create your own and be your best pitcher.
It's really important to understand that humanity is on a cycle, right? We've had booms and busts. We've had leaders. We've had people that are sort of entrepreneurs or trailblazers or whatever. But outside of like Noah and the Ark, I think everybody else is just doing something that somebody else did already.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people. People say like, "Wow, Steve Jobs, he's so revolutionary." Okay, what did he invent? An iPhone? I'm sorry, Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. Like, that's a bigger deal, right?
Yeah.
And then like Thomas Edison, George Westinghouse, Nikola Tesla, those guys were the Elon Musk, the Steve Jobs, and the Jeff Bezos of 1895. Okay, so or 1902 or whatever. So there's this thing that we see culturally, because we're only alive for one lifetime, depending on what you believe in the sort of gypsy taverns. But the reality is that, there's a lot of examples of people that have succeeded and gone through that path and already blazed that trail, and you can see why they were successful.
And we're going to take a short break, CJ. We'll be back. Keep that thought. But you're taking a piece of all these greats and creating your own. You're not reinventing the wheel. We'll be right back with more Business Leaders Live right here on Talk Radio 1680 KGED.
You are listening to Business Leaders with Lance Cardoza, the behind-the-scenes story of the business shakers and movers in the Valley and beyond. Once again, here's Lance Cardoza.
Welcome back, everybody, here to Business Leaders Live. I want to remind everybody you can catch this episode with CJ Wilson and more at lancecardoza.com. That's LanceCardoza.com. CJ Wilson, Major League Baseball player, race car driver, and love of cars, having Audi, Porsche, and BMW right here in Fresno. And CJ, we were just before break, we were talking about it's not like reinventing the wheel. A lot of times we take a piece of the great ones and we create our own. And I remember I work in the professional wrestling business, and nothing's unique there. Everything has been taken from the past, and then you create your own style, and you create your own, as you would be in that business, your gimmick, what you're going to be and how great you're going to make it. Same with baseball. I mean, you took a piece of some of the major league players, the pitchers that you loved, and you made your own style.
Well, I think it's important to understand that, like I was saying, there's a lot of people that have already succeeded in the field that you want to be successful in, right? I mean, if you want to be a television host, you could look at Larry King or, Johnny Carson or Jay Leno or Conan O'Brien or any of these guys that have already been wildly successful. And you can try to analyze it and say, why was he successful? What do people like about his comedy? What do people like about his personality or his diction or whatever? And then is that something that I can get my own version of that, right? If I was a stand-up comedian, I would watch nonstop hours of Dave Chappelle or Eddie Murphy or Richard Pryor or Seinfeld or whatever. And
you picked some great ones. Those were good ones.
Yeah. But that's the whole point is nobody is so unique that what they're trying to do has never been done in any field before, right? I mean, if you were like a physicist, you'd be saying, okay, what's the relationship between new research and resistance from the incumbent institution? You know what I mean? And that's the same kind of thing with everything. And I took that as an example to say that I can observe other people and I could learn and I could, kind of crawl into their situation and try to analyze, is that something I can do? Am I built physically similar? Am I going to be built physically similar? Can I throw like this guy? And, try to imagine it the same way that actors would have to watch other actors in order to kind of analyze and see, you can see someone's mistakes or someone's fear in their body language, and you can see their success and their confidence in their body language. And it's just something I try to incorporate, because when you're a little kid, you're such a blank slate. But if you kind of aim at the best, and then you're going out there playing against 10-year-olds, you're probably going to be a lot better than if you're aiming at 11-year-olds playing against 10-year-olds,
Absolutely. I read a story, CJ, and you might have heard this story too. It was a POW, and I can't remember exactly who it was, but to get through it, the prisoner of war, he loved golf. So he imagined playing the perfect game of golf just in his mind, right. And he read it to himself every day over and over and over. You've heard this story?
Yeah. It's like a pretty well-known tale that he hadn't really golfed and then was in this internment camp as a prisoner for a long time. And then as he got out, 8 years later, 6 years later after he was rescued, he went out and golfed and was apparently like a scratch golfer after that, because it's like free throws. If you tell yourself, shoot 100 free throws, you're better off imagining yourself shooting 100 free throws and visualizing the reality of like, okay, what's the ball feel like? Am I sweating? How am I bending my knees? Am I kind of like springing up? Am I kind of freezing and throwing the ball? What am I looking at? What's my target? If you're doing the mental exercise, if you simulate it on a hardcore enough level, then it becomes an extremely viable thing. And that's why, for racing, for instance, a lot of people use simulators and video games, because the tracks can be so accurate and the car's physics can be so accurate that really the only thing changing is the feel of the brake pedal and the steering wheel and the fear of, crashing.
Yeah, and the adrenaline. Do you see, being racing, baseball, and even business, do you watch a lot of, and I don't know about business, but do you watch a lot of tape back? Like you were saying, watching body movement, everything makes. Well, you
have to analyze yourself. And I think in business, trying to apply the same type of stuff that I did in baseball or even in racing as a team owner or as a racer myself, the big challenge, in my opinion, is finding out what data to really look at and how to measure, the current situation and how to project or create goals. If you have measurable goals as a runner and you say, I want to run a marathon, it's 9 months away. Okay, well, you need to get to the point where you can run 10 or 15 straight miles, before that date, which means that if you add 1/10 of a mile, of your running every week or something like that, you'll get there, So there's a lot of, I would say, techniques of analysis that are universal, but every business is different. For instance, like a pizza place versus a car place, a Westwoods versus In-N-Out Burger, they're going to have different metrics. It's not just about total revenue or how many gallons of soda you've sold or something like that. There's a lot of more intricate things that you can dial into, and almost everything is measurable, and that's what's important.
And that's what's amazing about sports, and that's why I love a lot of people that get out of a athletic professional, and a lot of guys make poor decisions. There's guys like you that you went into it with the intention of being great and having goals and a plan, and you came out and you carried that into business too. And I think a lot of times that people, you get into a position where as an athlete and in even business, it's more of a mental game in preparation to get yourself in the right place. A lot of times people get stuck working in the business or stuck working in the game instead of working on the game, like before they even got to the field or got to the office. And would you say that's true?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think everybody just has a different skill set and a different priority list. I mean, more power to the people that can like retire at a certain age and then just go golf and kind of chill. I'm just too industrious and a workaholic, and so I throw myself into things that are slightly more difficult or more ambitious, and that's why I've landed where I've landed. It's not easy by any means to jump into a business as sophisticated as cars and succeed at it. I mean, I would say that, it's the same 10 years to be an overnight success kind of deal. The thing is that not a lot of people, the car dealership business is challenging, number one, because you need to hop over a pretty big hurdle and financially. You need to invest a significant amount of money in order to possess the land or the banking or the inventory or be able to buy somebody else's business. And that's the worst thing about it, is that just because people have money doesn't mean that they're good people, and it doesn't mean that they're good at business. So you have to be willing to play at the high-stakes poker table and learn at the high-stakes poker table, which is not easy. It's much easier to learn in a cheaper industry and take your lumps. But when you take lumps in the car business, it's very painful.
Very painful. So you get out at 2015, correct me if I'm wrong, 2015, you were playing for the Angels and you retired. Did you retire in 15?
No, I retired after 16. I tore my biceps tendon pitching in rehabbing from surgery in 2016. So I was pitching in the minor leagues, like working my way back from shoulder surgery, and decided that it was probably in my best interest in life, because I'm an active person and I like to go do other things. I want to be able to lift my arm up above my head when I'm 50 years old and maybe play catch with my kids or something. So I had 5 elbow surgery, or five arm surgeries, 4 elbows and 1 shoulder. I broke my back, tore my hamstring, I had a stress fracture in my leg, tore my Achilles tendon, broke my hand. I had multiple strains and sprains over the years. So it got to the point where I realized that my pain tolerance was higher than my body's self-preservation instinct, and you get to a certain point when you don't want to be like an old broke-down cowboy. And I felt like, once I rehabbed myself to full health, I was either going to play one or 2 more years, or I was going to retire. And the situation, the outlook was not very good in terms of the teams that wanted me. I was destined to play for I would say a substandard team, and therefore probably end on a sour note. And I felt like it was better just to walk away a little bit more gracefully, than go out there and get clobbered, by good teams and pitch on a bad team,
And jeopardize maybe putting yourself in more future surgeries and everything you had to go through.
Oh, no, yeah. I was at the point where when I retired, I took it as a very straight calculation that I will absolutely need more arm surgeries. And if I continue to pitch, I will injure my body, and especially my arm. But if I go race professionally, then I have a chance of massive bodily damage.
Yeah.
But I'd been racing at that point for, I don't know, like a decade already, and I'd crashed multiple times, and I'd never been hurt. And I skateboarded growing up. I rode BMX bikes. I played football. Did all sorts of stuff. The only thing I ever got hurt doing was playing baseball. Ironically.
Yeah.
So I felt like maybe I was a racer trapped in a baseball life the whole time, and I needed to try that. So I raced in 2017. February, I bought the dealerships up here and then started racing full time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. So that's what brought in 17. You got the dealerships up here. Do you have dealerships in other areas too, other than Fresno?
I did at the time. I had dealerships in Chicago, Arizona, and Ventura, but I eventually sold everything off because the more I got involved in this store, the more I realized that they were all being run in a massively unsatisfactory way. and putting me at risk and creating too much liability for me. So I decided to unwind everything else, and it took about 2 years to do it. So last May, I sold my dealership in Arizona, and that was the last dealership I had outside of these ones.
So right here in Fresno, Porsche, Audi, BMW, and I've talked to people that have done business with you folks there, and CJ runs a top-notch operation. And so if you are out there looking for a Porsche, an Audi, or a BMW, make sure you go down and what should be their first step, CJ? If they're thinking about getting one of those vehicles, what do they do first?
Well, I think the first step in acquiring a car is realizing and being realistic about what your budget really is. I think a lot of people come in and they get distracted by cars that that might be over their skis a little bit. And I can tell you from personal experience that buying a car that's a little bit too expensive to keep is a very stressful thing. So what I would suggest is somebody comes up with a rough budget of what their monthly payment, what they can afford, or if they're a cash buyer, what they're willing to kind of put down, and then go from there. The thing is with these kinds of cars, and I'll even include Mercedes and, Lexus and stuff as the other kind of top echelon dealerships in town, you really have to consider your options and how you're treated. And I think that this is a premium segment. So in the same sense, if you were walking into a Louis Vuitton store, or if you're going to Wickersham to go buy a Rolex, then or Orloff to go get a tag or a piece of diamond jewelry or whatever, you need someone to treat you really well, and you need to have a really good feeling about what that situation is. If you don't have a good feeling or a good idea of where you're at, then it's going to be very difficult for you to achieve what you need, I guess is the biggest thing.
We're going to take one more break, CJ. We'll be right back. I have CJ Wilson on the phone.
giving you the inside story of business leaders in the Valley and beyond. This is Business Leaders with Lance Cardoza.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back right here in the studios at Talk Radio 1680 KGED. Business Leaders Live every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. And on the phone is it's a great pleasure of mine. I met this gentleman. CJ, when did we meet? It was the beginning of the season last year when you came in, or you've done it a couple years now, right? With the Grizzlies?
Yeah, but I think it might have been a little bit further than that. So
yeah.
The Valley has been a very different experience for me. I grew up in Southern California, and moving up here in 2017, I felt like buying three major league dealerships here. It's been interesting, the people that I've run across over the last couple of years.
There's very interesting people in Fresno, and I always tell people all the time, Fresno and Fresnans are the worst enemy of Fresno. When you get people from outside Fresno and they come in and they look at what we have and the resources that we have here to grow a family, grow business, we're the perfect situation. Distribution for companies, manufacturing. I always tell people, take a real good look at Fresno. And you know what's real amazing about Fresno, CJ, and you can say this, and you probably get a lot faster than other people, but 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you can be anywhere, Fresno, Clovis area, and in your cars, you can probably be there in about 10 minutes.
Depends on how many green lights I get, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really well distributed. I think in terms of like the urban planning, they've done a great job, especially with the developments in Clovis and Friant and all that stuff that's going on right now, Copper River, all that. The way they're expanding and then adding amenities along the way, even the schools like the Clovis school districts are incredible. The facilities are incredible and way better than anything I grew up with.
Yeah, so that tells you right now, because a lot of people probably listening here or watching on Facebook Live probably say C.J. Wilson, major league player, came out of Southern California, played for the Rangers, played for the Angels, race car driver, and he's in Fresno. And a lot of the Fresno people wonder, and you saw opportunity. Got a great, like you said, major league dealership and major league brands, and you planted your flag right here in Fresno to start your business.
Right. Yeah, the thing is too, the entrepreneurial spirit is very strong here, and I've had a chance, I think, since I've been here for a couple of years now. Even still, I'm peeling lots of layers of the onion. I had a meeting recently with a couple very, very established business owners, and they said, "Hey, we heard you're doing some good stuff in town. We want to sit down and talk with you." And I thought I took that as a flattering thing. They wanted to see if I was interested in participating on school boards or, school councils and things to focus on education and healthcare locally and things like that. And, all that stuff is very important because, like you mentioned earlier, I do have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old here in town. They are in school. They are going to go to, schools that everybody else goes to. And I want to make sure that all that stuff is future-proof, and I want to make sure that our schools are safe for our kids. And working with some of the charity efforts that I've done, I've met a lot of really, I would say, pillars of the community, and been very impressed with the character of the top echelon people in Fresno. It's been very cool.
Absolutely. And there's very good, hardworking people in Fresno. I think Fresno just really has opportunity for bigger and better things. And every week I do Business Leaders Live. News stories come across our studio here, and it's awesome to hear about the innovators and the people that are getting in the trenches and doing the work to make our city better and better. And throughout the Valley, we're all over the Valley here on Talk Radio 1680 KGED. Before the break, we were talking about coming up to Fresno, C.J. Wilson, Major League Baseball player, but racing's always been a passion. When you said as a kid, you looked at the magazines, you looked at everything, at the cars, and you wanted to be in that business, and you're in the racing business. Talk to me about some of the joy that comes from that. It's a business, it's work, but at the same time, you really love it. You're passionate. I think you're passionate about everything you do.
Well, I wouldn't do anything unless I was passionate about it. I guess you have to be willing to commit. And for me, I would say that, I have somewhat of an addictive personality. So when it comes to something as fun as racing, I've dabbled in a lot of different stuff over the years. I was, a beach kid. I used to grow up like surfing and stuff like that. And moving to Texas, there's obviously in Dallas, there's no water. There's no real water sports to speak of. You might have a bass boat and go fishing somewhere or whatever, but that's not really my vibe.
Yeah.
And so one day, this guy hits me up, and I had I think I had a 911 at that point or something. And he said, "Hey, you should really take this thing out on the track and see what it can do." I'm like, "Well, the NASCAR track? Like, what are you talking about?" He goes, "No, there's this club track called Motorsports Ranch, and it's out past Fort Worth. And, you can join and you can be a member, and then you just go out there." I said, "So it's like a country club?" He goes, "Yeah, it's a country club." So I went out there and rode along for a day with him in his race car, and that changed my life. That was it. I was like, okay.
You were hooked.
Yeah, I was hooked. And, he had like slick tires and a roll cage, and I'm in there with like the 5-point harness and the helmet on, and he's like slamming on the brakes and going around the corners at, 90 miles an hour and everything. And it was a hell of a time. It was incredible. And I had grown up really loving cars, and this was the first time I ever really experienced anything beyond like a little indoor go-kart thing where it was, or just hooning around and driving like a dummy on a mountain road. This is the first time I'd ever really experienced anything to that level. And so I signed up for membership. And this was laughable. Okay? The lifetime membership at the time was $3,000. So remember, I'm in the major leagues, and they're like, okay, a lifetime membership at this race car country club is $3,000. I'm like, here you go.
Done.
The easiest membership. It'd be like if GB3 said it's $20 for 20 years. I'd be like, there you go.
Done.
I mean, it paid for, right? Totally paid for, like,
And so you were living out there, I'm sure.
What's that?
You were living out there at the track after that.
Literally in 2009, a couple years later, I'd already bought a place in Dallas, but then I said, you know what? I'm single. I want to do this. At that point, I was really committing to the race car thing. And, so 2006, first time on the track, I did a couple track days in the car. 2007, on Halloween, I flew to Germany and picked up my first brand new car. So at the time I was 27 years old, and I'd been in the major leagues for 2.5 years, and that was the first time I had bought a new car. So if you think about that, in the major leagues, the minimum salary is hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I was still so frugal that I was only buying used cars,
Yeah, because your mindset and you reprogrammed yourself.
I had started investing when I was a kid. I started day trading and range trading in the stock market. My grandfather was a calculus professor and taught me like algorithmic trading and charting and stuff like that as a 13-year-old. So I was always very much into like the business aspect of things and the finance industry and whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I got started with that. And then by the time I was earning good salaries and stuff like that with baseball, then I had already started to buy like rental properties and accumulate, real estate holdings and things like that, because I looked at it as, okay, this is passive income. Obviously, the better I get at baseball, I wasn't making millions of dollars at the time. I was a kind of, I don't know, the 17th guy on a 25-man roster. Like I could have been traded at any point,
Yeah.
And I was trying to establish my own financial security. So I bought a place in Huntington Beach, bought a place in Fountain Valley, bought a place in Dallas. I had some places that I was renting out and things like that. And bought a place in Arizona. So I was kind of like, I would take some part of my paycheck and I would squirrel it aside and, buy some gold coins and buy some silver bullion or just whatever was going on at the time and trying to diversify my assets. And then I got to the point where I realized that my salary was going to take off and I could afford to get a cool car. So I did European delivery. I hired a professional race car driver to give me like professional racing instruction on a real track in Italy that off season. And so I went out there for a couple days and did that. And then I went to like racing school and then realized I kind of had a knack for the learning aspect of it. And not to say that I was a natural or anything, but I was willing to take instruction and I was willing to challenge myself. And a lot of people go into racing saying, I know how to do this. I'm really good. You should see me drive. I can race. And then they suck.
And they suck,
make mistakes and they crash.
Because they're stuck in their lane.
They're going in there in the Zen Buddhist sense with a full cup, right? They have their cup is full of water. They have no more room. Yeah. I went in there with an empty cup and I said, listen, you guys are literally professionals. You have to be better than me. Taking on that example, like I said earlier, Nolan Ryan taught me how to pitch. Wade Boggs taught me how to hit. Tom Seaver taught me how to pitch because I read their books. So,
Yeah.
So give me your secrets. That's what I did, and it worked. And I became proficient very quickly through some pushing the limits and making some mistakes. But knowing that was part of the process. I went out and got like a little Miata race car, and I had a couple race cars at the time. And then I got to the point where I was because I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like I bought like 4 race cars, and I was renting them out to people and getting paid like $1,000 here, $2,000 there to. And then I was looking at it as like, okay, whatever money I take in as income from the race car rentals, then I can spend myself.
Then you can put it back into
racing. That was kind of like my sponsorship was, Darren wants to rent my Miata for a weekend. I charge him $3,500. Then I can go spend $3,500 the next weekend, and it's zero net income. It's zero net loss. And that's when I started the race team officially. After I got to the point that I felt like I needed other people to manage it. And then, then we worked our way up from literally a spec Miata team, which is effectively like a $15,000 race car, all the way up to, over the course of about 10 years, the point that we're running the 12 hours of Sebring and the Watkins Glen 6 hours in the full professional Major Leagues IMSA series, in the WeatherTech series. Well, It was a really good run, but I got to the point where politically, the guy running the team he really liked Honda, and we had a good relationship with Honda because that was the team we were running the NSX at the time.
Yeah.
So I'm a Porsche guy, and Porsche was kind of looking at me sideways, saying like, "Hey, dude, we put you in our commercials. We let you drive like our super cool cars, and you're not racing a Porsche. What's up with that?"
Hey, we're going to take another break. It's absolutely passionate about racing. I love it. We'll be right back. More Business Leaders Live. Don't go away.
You are listening to Business Leaders with Lance Cardoza, the behind-the-scenes story of the business shakers and movers in the Valley and beyond. Once again, here's Lance Cardoza.
Welcome back, everybody, to Business Leaders Live. I have CJ Wilson on the line. Been talking to CJ over this past hour, and as we wrap up, CJ, I wanted to tell you that I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, and I want to, if young people tend to go to lancecardoza.com, and I encourage them all the time that are thinking about being an entrepreneur, here's some of the stories and the trials and tribulations and everything else that comes in the form of being an entrepreneur. And here's some of those stories to motivate them and also learn from them, like you've learned from the greats to become great at what you do. And what would you tell, CJ, a young mind today that is out there, maybe doesn't have everything, the world by the tail, and they're trying to figure it out, and they want to be great at what they do? What would you tell that young business person or a person inspiring to be an entrepreneur?
I would say that, and that's a great question, Lance. I think the biggest challenge that everybody faces right now is hoopla and the idea of an infinite ramp. Okay, I think a lot of people get wrapped up because they see other people flexing on Instagram, and they see, especially young people now, they live so much of their lives on social media. You just have to look at like what you're seeing from other people. A lot of times it's just advertising, and you have to look at it through that lens. It's BS. There's a lot of people that take selfies on private jets and take photos in their Rolls Royces, and they're like, yo, check out my program, buy my book. And there's only a couple people that actually have legitimate books that are worth anything in the entrepreneurial space. Tony Robbins, Robert Kiyosaki, that's pretty much it. And those guys have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
All these other new money guys are just con artists.
Flash in the pan. Here today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah. A lot of guys, they come, I'll have 18-year-old kids come in and say, like, oh, I want to be a car broker. And I'm like, okay, well, what credibility do you have? You're 18.
Yeah.
You don't deserve anybody to wire you money. Like, you haven't proven yourself. Go work at a dealership and do that. If somebody's like, oh, I want to be a banker, or I want to be a lawyer, or whatever, you have to go to medical school. You have to go to legal school. You have to go to, you have to pass the bar exam. And business-wise, it's the same thing. The best thing you can do if you want to be an entrepreneur is go work for the best businesses you can think of and learn the lessons of what they're good at, and see how hard it is to run a really, really good business. And then decide again. And be a sponge. Do I want to be an entrepreneur, or do I want to be a lieutenant for an awesome company? And if you get to the point where you can juggle the 10 or 12 skills required, meaning accounting, motivation, depersonalization, marketing, future thought, if you can get into those types of things, and protectionism, you have to look at your business as your family, and you have to drag a moat around it, and you have to fill it with alligators so that other people can't really, infiltrate your business. Destroy
what you work so hard for. And I think
this is something I will say. This is extremely important for everybody to understand. Your character as a business owner can never be called into question. Meaning, if you're out there and you're doing things that if your grandma found out about, she'd be a little bit embarrassed or whatever, eventually your business is going to take a hit. Eventually someone is going to blow the whistle on you. I mean, look at the whole Me Too movement, all that stuff. There's a lot of men that are entrepreneurs that think that hey, I'm the king, I get whatever I want. A lot of people get stepped on in that scenario, and then eventually they learn how to fight back, and they destroy your business. And so it's like, is it really worth it to have some aspect of your personal life ruin your business? And chances are it's not, but a lot of people make that mistake. And I would say there's a lot of literature out there from the Harvard Business Review that's probably, as a body of work, the best there is to read, number one.
Yeah.
So read Harvard Business Review, and then learn accounting. Because if you can't if you're not good with math and accounting, you have zero chance of being a successful business owner, because you get stolen from,
Get stolen, and that's what happens to even the business of the music business and the bands. The greats out there were they didn't know how to look at their business, and their business was stolen from and destroyed. And a lot of times that's their own fault. They put on the blinders and really did not know how to manage that. We have just a couple more minutes, CJ. I wanted to just a quick question, because you worked in Major League Baseball, and I know with all the heat and everything that's going on, and I explain to people all the time that because of the issue, like with the Astros, it was under a microscope, because today's world, it's a social media world. It's not like any of the cheating's been going on for years. It's like our politicians, they got caught. And so what is your opinion on that?
I think that the Astros have been known as a cheating organization for a long time.
There you go. It's like Tom Brady and the football.
Yeah, I mean,
I just ticked off a lot of people.
The Belichick thing, the win at all cost mindset, that starts at Little League, with some of the coaches, and it definitely is a part of college. It's been a part of college recruiting for decades. Players getting paid under the table, players' parents, Reggie Bush's mom getting a free house so he went to USC, things like that.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of instances, this whole like scamming to get your kid into college situation. Mm-hmm. A lot of this is a result, like I said, back again, of the hoopla of thinking that you have to do something more than what you're doing. A lot of times making steady progress is how you get anywhere in life, and taking these big leaps, if you can't sustain that momentum, you're just going to fall on your face eventually. You'll run out of energy, run out of lives, run out of people to bribe, and it's happened to all these people in all these instances. Lance Armstrong, obviously the college admissions scandal, the Astros. You have to earn it in real life, otherwise you're going to get smacked in the back of the head, and that is the hardest thing, is staying humble when you have the spotlight on you. And I think a lot of people don't know how to lose with dignity or finish second with dignity, and they make the world a worse place as a result, because they cheat to win. They
cheat to win. They're taking shortcuts instead of staying sometimes slow and steady and focused on what the prize is. Hey, CJ, I appreciate your time. I thank you so much for calling in on Business Leaders Live. Reminding everybody you can go to lancecardoza.com to listen to this episode and more. Any quick final thoughts? We got about 15 seconds there, CJ.
Yeah, Lance, really quick. I'm officially a farmer now locally, so I'm part of the crew there.
Cool.
If I can plug anything, it would be my bug farm. It's hermetiapro.com, and people can check me out. If they check me out on LinkedIn, I post about our bug farm and how we're composting local ag trash into sustainable food for
awesome.
For people, pets, and animals. There you go.